through the chair, the statute requires teaching of this in health education. So by opting out, we would be in the same situation that the board member has just discussed, which is we would potentially be out of compliance with the state requirement, even though we didn't mean it to be that way. So by state statute, we're required to teach the stuff. It does allow us the leeway to opt people out per the statute. I don't have it right here with me right now, but we can look it up. I should share it with you.
Well, we will be still teaching it though.
Yes, ma'am.
So we are meeting the state statute. We are still teaching it. The parent would opt in to the teaching of this to their students. So I don't know, I would need to understand why we would be out of compliance. We are still teaching it. You're giving a parent is giving permission for their child to be taught this.
Yes, ma'am. I will look into the statute itself to be able to give you a better answer for this.
Okay. And I would say that there is a lot of conversation around parental rights, parents wanting to know what's going on in a school district with their child. And I think this helps safeguard that parental rights in the sense that if I'm a health teacher and the lesson's coming up and we're going to be learning about sexual education, and I say to my kids in my class, all right, it's very vital that your parent gives permission for you to take this class. Or you can't actually, you have to do something different. And we send that communication to the students, we send that communication through the portal. We make sure that the parents understand if you want your child to learn this, then this is the form that you need to fill out to say this is what you want. I personally think that because a lot of people don't pay attention to it for whatever reason, people are busy. Students generally would probably not be, I think some students are very curious and they want to learn. So it would be to their benefit to make sure their parent sees this and says, listen, this is what we're learning about. I need you to perhaps, to give permission for us, for me to take this class or to learn this particular topic today. And they sign it and the parent knows this is, yes, I do want my child to learn this. On the other hand, that you can have a situation where it's not really high on the list for their parent to know that they're learning this or that they're taking this class because, it's not. I think there needs to be more emphasis from the district to have parent permission around this particular topic and subject. And it's very easy to do. It's not difficult. Teachers handle it in their classrooms. It's 1 or 2 classes. You just have to have permission from the parent in order to do this, to learn this.
What's the process now? Aren't parents notified that this lesson is coming? It's going to be taught at a certain given time, and they have the option to opt out. That's the way it works now. So their parents are given notification that the lesson is being taught. And so they have the option to opt out at that time. And you heard the numbers. So
I don't think those numbers are reflective of what
but
parents.
to your point, if they're not paying attention, then if you ask them to opt in, they may not pay attention to that either. So you don't skew the numbers just the opposite direction.
I disagree. I think there's an appetite that parents want there to be a place where they give permission for this to be taught to their children. That's
So if they're missing an opt-out form, when they miss an opt-in form, like it's the same. They just be missing the form. So is it a operational piece, or we have to do more with the form? Because if the issue is they don't see the form, then they're not going to see the form in any way. So that's an operational piece, not I think this, or this is my value, or this is what I want to teach.
I would like the district to go through the process of how parents are notified and, if a student's being taken out of the classroom, how's that happening?
And somebody walk through the steps of how we notify, how we signal to parents that the reproductive health is coming up, and how we inform them about their options to opt out.
To the chair, there are 2 notification times. At the beginning of the school year, parents get a notification amongst the package of paperwork they get. Then 2 weeks or more prior to the start of the unit, the parents receive a letter specific to health education and reproductive health coming up and when the dates will be. And in that letter, the instructor and the administration of the school also delineates where they can go to see the materials, so that parents can go to the website, see the curriculum pieces. Those are the only things that are on the website right now is reproductive health curriculum for 5th grade, 6th through 8th, and then 9th through 12. And then after they review the curriculum, then the parents are somewhat ushered over to the focus area. They can go into focus and select the opt-out for the grade level that their student's in at the time. Teachers are trained and told over and over again to make sure that they review their opt-out list so they know which students have opted out. Those students are planned for to be out of the classroom during the time of instruction for that entire unit. We have a couple of things including EverFi materials that they can take offline someplace else. And it depends on the school as to where the students are placed while that instruction's happening. So there's already a plan in place where there is a certified adult that takes them in and oversees their online education at that time, and then they're returned back to the classroom when the instruction's ended.
So, I understand the beginning of the year, all the paperwork. Again, that's a lot of paperwork, and you're just at some point just signing your name and pushing it aside. I mean, I have 5 kids, so I have to do that paperwork every year for all of those children. When you talk about 2 weeks before the lesson is taught, what is the means of communication that the parent is receiving that this is coming up in this child's health class, and where they can go to review the materials? How are they receiving that communication?
They receive a paper letter.
And if their student doesn't bring the paper home and doesn't show it to the parent's not going to see it, the parent's still not going to know. If the student wants to learn, the student will make sure the parent sees the paper, signs the paper, and sends it back. That's my position. We're not. I feel like we need to do this different. And I am more in line with an opt-in. The parent sees it, signs it. Sending a piece of paper home with the kid is not. Listen, we know how kids are. So that's my position. That's where I stand on this. And just wanted to bring it to the board.
Yes, thank you for the chair. I just want to chime in just on some personal conversations I've had with parents regarding this issue. And I know that there was a lot of concern coming from their student. Mom, Dad, if you opt me out of this, they pull me out of the classroom and it's embarrassing and I have to go sit in a room and do some other paperwork type of thing. And I know that there's that issue too, that we're having a small population whose parent is like, I'm opting out, you're not going to be taught this curriculum, and then it becomes a social, emotional issue for the child that's getting pulled out of the classroom. To Vice Chair's point, I think when you flip it to an opt-in situation, it makes it a little bit different on the student, because it's not like you're being pulled out of something, you're being added into something, and so from the student's perspective, you don't feel like you're being punished because of your parent's decision of being pulled out of the classroom and not having a curriculum. So I've had those conversations with parents about how their child actually feels when they're being pulled out instead of being added into something. So I just wanted to also, make sure that that was part of the conversation, because I think it's an awkward situation for our students when that happens.
I would say that it seems as though there's a small majority is being loud, and the numbers say that parents are not opting out. Like, if we're saying all these parents are that concerned, you would think some, at least 100, would have maneuvered their way to figure it out, and we have like 40. Like, that is telling in a district that has thousands and thousands of students. So it's almost, I don't see it the way you're seeing it, because if it was really that much, you would at least have a good chunk of folks like really going and saying we're opting out, and then it would be like, oh, we may need to lean towards the opt-in. But at this point, the numbers are low, the 5, like.
That's because parents aren't seeing it.
You're telling me all these parents that are saying they're screaming loud, they would be the ones who would go and find it. They would be the ones, if they're that like worked up about it, they would be the ones that are like, hey, let me go find it. And then 5 of them did. So I think this is that issue. I think it's a different issue. I think it's something that we're hearing that a lot of folks aren't as concerned about. If they were, the numbers would be flipped. It would be totally flipped.
The reason, obviously, parental rights is a big issue right now.
It is.
Not just in the city of Jacksonville, based on the elections that we just had. Parental rights is first and foremost. It's also in the United States of America.
Mhm.
And so what I'm saying is these numbers don't reflect that. And so what I'm telling you, and all with genuineness of my heart, is that I don't think this is reflective, and I think there's a flaw in this process. And so, therefore, I would like to see what the numbers would be if it was an opt-in. If a parent had to say, yes, I give permission for you to teach this to my child, what would the numbers be? I think they would be large, but I think you're gonna see a difference. And I say that with all due respect.
Yeah, me too.
I think this is a conversation that we need to have.
Yeah.
And if a parent wants their child to take this class, then they put their name on a piece of paper, send it in, and say, yes, absolutely, I want my child to take this class, this lesson.
Board Member Pearson.
What's the control in that experiment
In the opt-in.
and the opt-in? Because I think we have 2 variables. One variable is content and the other variable is process. So how would we design this in a way? Sorry, my daughter's in IB biology, and I am living in the IA world of IB biology, so that is on my mind. But so thinking about designing an experiment, we would be testing really for 2 variables at the same time, and how would we have confidence that the results that we're getting are giving us accurate information. So, I'm not finished. So, if on one hand we want to know, do parents want their children to receive or not receive the state mandated curriculum and instruction, then that seems to be one question. But the other question seems to be, are Duval County Public Schools processes for memorializing parents' wishes or concerns or rights adequate? That's a different question. That's what I'm trying to figure out, is how do we do this in a way, what's the one thing we want to isolate to study, and then how do we do this in a way that we get accurate information? Because I don't think that moving from an opt-out to an opt-in does either. I don't think that it accurately assesses parents' wishes, and I also don't know that it accurately captures the method actually captures that. So anyway, that's
Well,
where I'm
I
coming from.
appreciate that. I guess wanna simplify it. I just think parents should get permission, for this, lesson to be taught. So I've always been very uncomfortable with an opt-out situation. And I'm way more comfortable with the parent giving permission and not giving permission, so that's just where I sit.
The state, I guess, a legal question to the statute allow for opt-in versus opt-out. And you do either or.
And through the chair to the board, I've got to know that's exactly what I'm gonna look at. That's what I'm gonna look at after the meeting. I'll need to take a dive into it. And, the question I have is opt-in versus opt-out, and what would be the potential, if any, penalties or ramifications of having an opt-in as opposed to an opt-out. I don't know. And although I've gotten some information handed to me, give me a chance to look at that.
Very good. I would
And I'll be happy to
appreciate
put
that.
And a follow-up question is there a percentage of students we have to provide that curriculum?
That's what I started out asking.
Yeah, yes, and I think that's like part of the potential penalties or penalties.
Very good.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that.
If we don't offer the instruction to enough students, like is there a threshold?
Through the chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
just, I think, just in hearing the conversation, one of the additional things we could look at is the forms of communication that we give to parents around what that is. I mean, I've heard, we provide the letter that could be perceived as, it's a chance that the kid takes it home or doesn't take it home, but what else above and beyond can we do in communicating to parents like this topic, that 2-week window out? I mean, we have a number of different ways, whether it's our new absent teams, whether it's in focus, you could have a message that goes to students when a parent logs in. There are a lot of other places that we also can put the communication to ensure that parents are receiving it in the meantime of wherever we land on in an opt-in, opt-out, but just as a third way to just ensure that parents are being communicated.
It's also a topic of open house.
But I think we could articulate all those things and provide it to the board and say, here, in addition to just, it's more than the letter, but just make sure that we have all that articulated out to at least bring that back.
Right.
Yes, to the chair, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. So that was going to be my point. Is I'm more concerned about the process in which we communicate with parents than anything else, because we hear this about multiple topics. I never received anything. I never got this for my child. The dog ate it. Whatever the excuse might be. And this is a sensitive topic, and I think, if we've got a red flashing banner when we log into Focus or whatever we need to do to draw attention, I think that to me is that's my concern with this particular topic. The curriculum is just making sure that we're going above and beyond to make sure that parents are notified in every language and in every possible way. And I think that's a concern. It's just making sure that we're notifying and parents are seeing it.
Can we add Parent Academy to that? Because I feel like I have 4 or 5 emails almost a day. A message from your child's school, and it's a flyer for a program that I can sign up for to learn about something. Anything from Excel spreadsheets to, I can't remember what the last one was. Oh, smartphone is the one that's been pushing lately. Is your child's smartphone, and so I'm getting those a lot. So that would be another way to just get it in that inbox.
Yeah.
Is to do it through whatever system that is.
I think there's also some data on, to your point around, it's 2 variables, the operational piece, but also the actual material. And I know the material's been stripped back. Like that's been a whole conversation that we've had. And I wonder if folks are like, say, hey, let me see the curriculum. They saw it, they're like, okay, and I'll go ahead and sign it or not opt out at this point. Because I think there's multiple conversations going, one around, hey, this is where my values are and this is what I want to see in the curriculum. That's changed and been shifted and stripped back. And now we have this. what I worry about too is those students who need it. Like there are students and families who need this education, and if we say it's an opt-in versus an opt-out, and those families are already maybe potentially not engaged, are they just not going to get this information? And then we see these numbers spike, and then the shack's like, here's what we recommend because the numbers are spiking because we're not providing enough education. So I think it's a cyclical, it goes back and forth. I get your point. I just think it leaves out a chunk of families who need the education, and we don't do this for anything else. Like we're not opting into anything else.
I appreciate you guys entertaining me around this conversation. I think it's something that a lot of people in the community want to hear. But as you just said, a lot of parents aren't paying attention. And so I just want to land in the right place.
Yeah.
That we protect students, we protect their welfare, their health, but we also make sure that parents are paying attention and that they know what's going on and what their children are being taught. Because at the end of the day, there's no doubt this is a very sensitive topic. And we want to make sure that we land in a good place. So I appreciate you indulging me.
At the risk of another can of worms, but if parents have rights, they have the right not to pay attention.
Yeah.
And that, I mean,
Happens on a daily basis.
right, and so that's part of the bucket of parents' rights, is they have the right not to be engaged, they have the right not to pay attention. That's not the route I've taken as a parent, but I think our school system would be vastly better if all parents were engaged and exercised their rights to be engaged and notified and, involved in their kids' education, but that's a right. It's just not a reality.
I think it's dangerous for us not to have this type of education for our kids. Like if we don't give them something, opt in, opt out, whatever, they're gonna go find it from somewhere or somebody that is not a professional, not somebody who has expertise in it. And I think it can be very dangerous. We've seen numbers spike and go, and it's because of what we did or did not do. So I think it's a great conversation to have. It's one that I would hope that if parents are emailing and that engaged, they would be the ones opting out. I think what's happening too is we have folks who don't have kids in the schools who are like, this is how I think it should be. We're hearing a lot from them, when at the end of the day, our parents are spoken with the numbers. So I think that's, in my mind, that's our research, is like the numbers that say 5 people opted out. Like 5, okay. So that's where I land on it, but I appreciate the conversation. I don't know what that means for us.
Something that you're watching, I mean, what would be the impact of that?
Yeah, we are absolutely watching that because we know that an opt-out policy typically provides education to a broader swath of students. But if you're having to opt in, we have parents who are very busy, who are not necessarily able, because of the demands on them, to be as engaged, to know, oh, I have to opt them in. All students need access to this information. As a counselor, I worked extensively, sadly, with students who had experienced sexual abuse. And very often the education they received through our, at that time, comprehensive human sexuality education gave them the language and the tools to be able to describe their victimization. And so they were able to then, be believed. When we cut out that kind of information, not only do students have, healthy information, but they also will not have the information they need to stay safe. So opting in is a terrible idea.
I mean, the movement says that, this is about parental involvement and parental rights, and they want to make sure that the community is receiving the information about there's going to be this curriculum presented. And I think that the concern by some of the new school board members, or even some existing school board members that have conservative leanings, is that perhaps parents aren't getting the message when that curriculum is coming up, and that's why they want them to have to opt in.
Okay, and that's a good point. My experience is that whenever we provided that information and curriculum in schools, we had it available to parents. And it would be, in many cases in the media center, parents were invited to review it, to see it, and they could always choose to opt their children out. but it was available on the website. And so they have an opportunity to be acquainted and review. And if they choose not to do that, that's okay. And they can always opt their kids out. That's always an option. But certainly we should not prevent the majority of students from having access to this very important information.
Kelly Frazier, is the Northside Coalition also watching that issue? And I think of that as an issue perhaps a little bit far afield for a civil rights focused organization.
uh, it's not something on our forefront, but it is, when we're concerned about what makes our community better. And when I think about inclusion, I'm thinking about representation for the children. I'm thinking about what is most important for them. Who actually benefits most from this? And I think about what Judy just said in terms of when something happens to these kids, it takes a village. You have your parents, you have family, you have friends, you have neighbors, and you have the school. And the schools provides information sometimes that the parents that they don't get at home. It also provides a comfort space for them. So it needs to be a place where the kids feel comfortable. So this is not something on our forefront, but it is something that we're concerned about. We're concerned about making our community better and anything that does that.
We've got a call from Susan in Mandarin. Good morning, Susan. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to echo what they're saying about the opt-in. I listened to that board workshop, and Charlotte Joyce was pushing opt-in quite a bit, even though she was given data that very few parents actually opt their kids out. And in response to that, she changed her wording from parents to the community, as if the community has a right greater than what the parents want. And I found that very alarming. And also in that same meeting, April Carney seemed to want to shame people that opted in, because she said that the students who opted out sometimes were shamed. I don't know if that's true or not, but her implication seemed to be that she wanted to shame parents who opted in. And so I found that whole conversation very alarming, and I hope people will listen to that and see about their takeaway.
Thanks, Susan. Your thoughts, Katie?
I watched that as well, and I did hear Charlotte Joyce talk about the opt-in versus opt-out, and I do think that that is extremely dangerous. And at the end of it, she did say, "I think children need this curriculum." So I'm just confused why they wasted, I think, 45 minutes discussing that policy if she believes that kids need this. And she talked about the community coming out, and the opt-out doesn't reflect that. But I will say the people that showed up to those board meetings, those were not parents. And so I do think that what's reflective of those numbers who were opting out is accurate at this point.
So what's your takeaway? I mean, after last night's meeting, you